everyone, welcome to SR Concepts. This is the part 5th of the chapter named Tissues from the biology of class 9th, and in this video I'm going to start another category of animal tissues, that is connective tissues. So dear students, there are many examples of connective tissues. You know something about blood, bone, ligament and tendon, cartilage, areolar connective tissue, and adipose tissues. So many of them you have actually listened, or you have learned something about them in the previous classes. So in this video we will discuss a few of them. So first of all, let us understand what are connective tissues. So dear students, here you can see uh, a question is written: why are they called connective tissues, and what are their functions? So dear students, these tissues, as you can see, blood, bone, ligament, tendon, these all have something supportive functions, right? Means these connective tissues actually connect different tissues or different structures or organs of the body. They support the organs and tissues, they bind or separate them from each other, and this is why they are called connective tissues. A very important point about their presence in the body is that they are the most abundant and widely distributed tissues in any animal body. Students, if we talk about their function, we have already discussed this one is the function of connective tissues, and we can also learn that they provide structural framework and give support to different tissues forming organs. They prevent the organs from getting displaced by our body movement. So these twins connecting, binding, separating, and providing structural framework, these are a few major functions of connective tissues. So this is why actually everywhere the connective tissues are required for this purpose. So that's why they are one of the most abundant connective and most abundant animal tissues in any animal body. Students, let's talk about the structure of connective tissues. Most of the connective tissues have something similar plan of their structure, means there are certain similarities in the structure of all connective tissues. What are these similarities? Students, the cells of all the connective tissues are loosely spaced and embedded in an intercellular matrix. Here you can see this is an image of a connective tissue, right? Here you can see this greenish portion. This greenish portion is actually a background substance, and it is called an intercellular matrix. So this is the intercellular matrix, and in this matrix, in this substance, many cells are just embedded, but the cells are far apart from each other, means they are loosely spaced. So this is the important feature of all connective tissues, that they have cells loosely embedded in a intercellular matrix. And along with the cells there are many fibers also. Here you can see these bluish colored bundles of fibers. So these fibers are also present. So in a connective tissue there are three things. One is the matrix, that is called intercellular matrix, the other is the cells, and the third one is the fibers. So matrix, cells, and the fibers. Okay, the matrix may be jelly like, fluid, dense, or rigid. So the consistency of the matrix may be any one of them, like jelly like, it may be fluid, it may be dense or rigid. For example, if we talk about blood, then the matrix is fluid, and if we talk about bone, then the matrix is rigid and dense. Okay, dear students, so depending on the consistency, right, the consistency of or the nature of the intercellular matrix, the nature of the connective tissue also varies, right? The nature of matrix differs in connective tissues in concordance with the function of the particular connective tissue. So whatever is the function according to that is the consistency or the nature of the matrix, right? So for example, we know that the bones function is to provide strong structural framework, so that's why the matrix is very hard and strong. Okay, so if we talk about the first example of the connective tissue, then it is blood. Blood is also called a fluid connective tissue. Let's learn something about blood. Dear students, blood has a fluid or liquid matrix called plasma, in which different types of cells like red blood cells, also called red blood corpuscles, right, white blood cells, and platelets are suspended. So we can say that blood has two things. One is the plasma, that is the fluid matrix or liquid matrix, plus the cells of blood, which are of three types: RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. Okay, now plasma contains certain proteins, salts, hormones, and not only this, protein contains all the digested food materials, different gases like carbon dioxide and oxygen, right? And hormones, different enzymes, different ions like sodium, potassium, and many things are present in the plasma. Plasma also contains different types of proteins like albumin proteins, and you have studied about antibodies which are called immunoglobulins. They are also present in the plasma. Now if we talk about function of the blood, then the function of the blood is actually distribution of different things. For example, distribution of digested food materials, distribution of hormones to different target sites, collection of waste materials from the cells, and moving it to different parts of the body wherever they need to be sent. For example, the blood collects urea from all the cells of the body and leaves it to the kidney, where the kidney releases it in the form of urine. Another function is the transport of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide. You know that the transport of oxygen is done by RBCs of the blood. So another function of the blood, you can see the maintenance of temperature, means it distributes the heat throughout the body and maintains the temperature of the body. Another very important function of the blood is to provide immunity. So dear students, we can say that there are three major functions of blood. One is the distribution of different things like foods, waste materials, hormones. Another is distribution of heat and maintenance of the body, and the third one is to provide immunity. This students, immunity to the body is actually provided by the WBCs or white blood cells of the blood. Okay, now we will discuss one by one about the different cells of the blood. For example, if we talk about red blood cells, they are called red blood corpuscles or erythrocytes also. They are generally oval, disc-like, and biconcave shape, right? And they lack a nucleus when they mature. Especially if we talk about mammalian RBCs, right? The mammalian RBCs do not have nucleus at their maturity. They contain a respiratory pigment known as hemoglobin. A red colored pigment is filled inside the RBCs, right? That is called hemoglobin. And this hemoglobin is actually involved in transport of oxygen in different tissues. So the RBCs actually collect oxygen from lungs. As we inhale air, the air goes to lungs, and from that air the RBCs collect oxygen. This oxygen binds to the hemoglobin, then these RBCs move to the different tissues where they distribute oxygen to them. Okay, now if we talk about another type of cells, then it is white blood corpuscles. So white blood corpuscles are also called leukocytes. As you have discussed about, we have discussed leucoplasts, they are colorless plastids. In the same way, leukocytes are the colorless cells of the blood. That's why they are called white blood cells. So they are generally colorless cells, and they are capable of amoeboid movement and play an important role in body's defense mechanism, means in body's immunity. There are different types of white blood cells. First of all, there are neutrophils, which have changing nuclear shapes, and they kill pathogen by phagocytosis. If we talk about basophils, then they help in allergic responses by releasing histamine and release of heparin, which is an anticoagulant. So, dear students, histamine, whenever there is some infection in our body or there is some allergic reaction, right, histamine is released from basophils, which causes inflammation, redness, hotness in that particular area. So, wherever there is swelling, there is a function of basophils, right? And they also release heparin. Heparin is a substance which prevents your blood to clot inside the body, but whenever blood comes out of the body and gets exposed to the oxygen, it clots. So while the blood is circulating in your body, it does not clot because the blood contains heparin, which is actually released by basophils. Okay, next, if we talk about eosinophils, then they kill pathogens and they again help in allergic responses. Lastly, the lymphocytes, T lymphocytes, there are two types of lymphocytes. One is T lymphocytes, which cause cell mediated immunity, means these are the cells which help in killing pathogens, and B lymphocytes, they produce antibodies. So dear students, in class 8th we have discussed that whenever a pathogen enters into our body, the body cells, means the blood cells, white blood cells produce certain proteins known as antibodies, which help in killing the bacteria or the pathogen. So dear students, these antibodies are actually produced by B type of lymphocytes. Now finally, the monocytes, these are the cells, when they enter into the tissue they become larger and then they are called macrophages. So dear students, monocytes convert into macrophages, and macrophages are actually very big in size, and they are just killer, and they kill the pathogens again by the process of phagocytosis. If someone asks you which two cells of the blood are involved in phagocytosis, then you will say neutrophils and macrophages. Both of the cells engulf the bacteria, engulf the pathogen, and kill by phagocytosis. You have already studied endocytosis. So when endocytosis is done by neutrophils and macrophages, then the process called phagocytosis. Okay, so dear students, here you can see there are different